let's just start with, I remember watching the game where Wentz gets hurt. And I remember the report comes out, it's an ACL, he's done for the season. And I remember my initial thought is, well, that's such a shame. This was such a good team and such a good story, and now they're done. And that was genuinely my thought. Yeah. And I'm sure I'm not the only person, including people inside that room, who had that thought. So as the coach, what is the first thing that a coach does to make sure that that thought does not take over a locker room?
I had to remind our football team just how good they were. And what I meant by that is I had to remind them how good our defense was. Our red zone efficiency, touchdown efficiency was tops in the NFL. We had a really good rushing offense. I just had to remind the players that we're still a good football team. And you know, we've kind of overcome some obstacles throughout the season. We lose Jason Peters. We lose an all-pro tackle. We lose Darren Sproles. We lose Jordan Hicks. We lose Chris Maragos. We lose some top, players on our football team, and then our quarterback. So I just had to remind our guys that, listen, the next man steps up, and understand that Nick Foles is not a rookie quarterback that's taken over the reins, and just reminding them that we're still good and we still got a lot of work to do.
Coach, how much did we talking about this preseason? We're talking about the production. How much did the plan change? How extensive was that communication with you and the rest of the coaching staff? We have to build this around Nick Foles now after the plan with Carson Wentz.
Well, I had to go back, and myself and Frank Reich and John DeFilippo and even Jeff Stoutland had to sort of sit down and go back through what Nick Foles was comfortable running, executing in the offense, and whether it was RPOs, whether it was play action pass, whatever it was, and then having conversations. So I went back and I watched him when he played for the Rams. I watched him in Kansas City. I even went back and watched some of his college tape just to kind of get a feel for him again, because remember in 2012, I was part of the Philadelphia Eagles staff that drafted Nick Foles. So, I had a history with him. And so just going back and diving into his past and having great communication and conversation with him and figuring it out and putting it all together.
All right, so the book is now, it's out, and it is called Fearless: How an Underdog Becomes a Champion. And it genuinely is that story. And Sal, of course, has his book as well. And he was talking earlier this morning about just anyone who knows anything about Philadelphia understands the passion of the fan base there, understands how long they had been waiting for that moment. So how do you describe in the book what it has been like since you actually pulled this improbable thing off?
It's been special for the city of Philadelphia, for myself, for the team, the entire organization. Mr. Lurie, who spent 24 years as owner, going after the coveted Super Bowl trophy. And so, for me to do it in our second year, to bring it home to Philadelphia, is very special for that fan base. And not just the city of Philadelphia, but the surrounding fan base in Pennsylvania and Delaware and New Jersey and places like that. And then even when I get a chance to travel, whether we're out of the country or other parts of the U.S., so many Eagles fans and how appreciative they are of winning this Super Bowl.
Michael, I have the book. I've read it. I've gone through it tooth and comb. I got to tell you, he doesn't give himself enough credit. Doug Pederson, when he was hired, he was considered by USA Today as the 7th worst coach to be hired in 2016. And what he did to keep this team together, I was around this team day after day, and he describes it in this book, how important it was to build and rebuild relationships when players went down. And I remember standing on the football field, US Bank Stadium, with you after the game, and I said, Doug, what was it about this team that allowed you to prevail against Bill Belichick in Super Bowl 52 despite everything? And you said to me, resiliency. And I think it comes from Doug Pederson and his leadership ability and how he kept this team together.
All right, so let's now fast forward to here, because we got Sal here, which means we got to get some news here, right? We're going to get some breaking news. So just come on.
It's my job.
There's always breaking news with
Who's
Sal.
starting week 1? Is it going to be Wentz, or is it going to be Foles? 2 weeks. It's going
to be me.
All right, good.
Okay, so
that's news. That's a headline. Let's go with it.
Alert the Associated Press.
Alert them, yeah.
How would you describe where we are right now as far as Wentz and his return? And
that's obviously the topic of discussion. Wentz is doing extremely well in his rehab, number one. And we just put him back into 11-on-11 drills this past week, and he's extremely strong in his lower body, his upper body. He looks good. I mean, you would think that there was not an injury. Yeah. But this decision is above me. This decision is a medical issue. This decision is going to be with our doctors and team trainer and Howie Roseman, myself, even dialogue with Carson Wentz. And whenever he is cleared, he's cleared. And that's where we're going. And we'll see what happens here in a couple of weeks.
There's no sense of urgency because we talked earlier about it. You guys have the luxury of having the guy who was the MVP in the Super Bowl who happened to be the backup quarterback. And then you've got a guy who needs to get healthy. But now we're watching Nick Foles struggle a little bit in the preseason. Is there any sort of a rush now because of what you're seeing from Nick Foles, or are you still at that same peaceful place?
I don't think so. I don't think so. And here's why. Alshon Jeffrey's not out there. Nelson Aguilar's not out there. Jay Ajayi hasn't been out there. Corey Clement hasn't been out there. Darren Sproles hasn't been out there. Jason Peters hasn't been out there. We haven't had our complement of really our starting offensive 11 guys on the football field our entire preseason. So, we're playing a lot of young players, which is great for the young talent because it shows us what we have in some of our, and it's a great example of what we did last year with some of the youth being able to step up and handle the spotlight. So until we get our full complement of players back offensively, I think it's unfair to pin everything on Nick, and we just got to continue to work and get better.
I just want to go back to the Wentz question for a second, Coach. You're the CEO of the team, right? I mean, at some point you can say to everybody, listen, I'm going to be here a long time. Carson Wentz is going to be here a long time. Let's just think about what we're doing here. Don't you have veto power in the end to say when Carson Wentz gets on the football field?
No. I'm not gonna step across the line. This is a medical issue. This is a decision that, and we have data on ACL and injury that Carson has and had that says, hey, this is the deadline. This is X. And when he's cleared by our medical staff, he's cleared. And until that point, we're just going to continue to roll. And again, we're going to see what happens here in a couple of weeks.